the secret World War II weapon that crushed Hitler's final gamble. It's December 1944, deep in the frozen forests of Western Europe. The world believes the war is nearly over. The Allies are pushing toward Germany, confident that victory is within reach. Then, like a ghost from an earlier, darker time, Hitler launches one final counterattack. What happens next stuns the world and introduces a weapon so secret, so devastating, that even its existence was top secret until the end of the war. This is the story of how American science turned the sky itself into a killer, and how one unauthorized decision at the Battle of the Bulge changed history. In mid-December 1944, the German army, battered, bloodied, and supposedly broken, roared back to life. Hitler's plan was simple but insane. Smash through the Allied lines in Belgium, capture the port of Antwerp, and split the British and American armies in two. He called it Operation Watch on the Rhine, his last desperate throw of the dice. More than 200,000 German soldiers, 1,000 tanks, and nearly 2,000 artillery guns gathered under the thick fog of the Ardennes forest. To the Americans, the sector was quiet, perfect for rest and rotation. But the quiet was a trap. At dawn on December 16th, the ground exploded. German artillery pounded American positions with over 2,600 shells per minute, catching everyone completely off guard. Chaos reigned. Roads jammed with retreating convoys and civilians. Communications collapsed. It looked like the Allies had just been sucker-punched by a miracle. But on one small stretch of the front, a man named Colonel Oscar Axelson was about to break the rules and save the line. Colonel Axelson commanded the 46th Artillery Group supporting the 38th Cavalry Squadron, a small recon force holding the sector near Monschau, Germany. His men were outnumbered, outgunned, and on the verge of collapse. Standard artillery wasn't slowing the German assault. Every minute, the enemy pushed closer. And that's when Axelson made the call that could have ended his career. Or worse. He ordered his gunners to load the most closely guarded shells in the American arsenal, the proximity fuse. This was no ordinary fuse. It was top secret, restricted to the Pacific Theatre for one reason. If the Germans ever got their hands on one, they could copy it. But Axelson didn't have time for fear or red tape. He knew his men were finished unless he tried something radical. He gave the order: load the proximity shells. Moments later, the battlefield changed forever. When the first rounds detonated, the Germans froze. The shells weren't hitting the ground, they were exploding above it, in midair, right over their heads. Steel fragments rained down like a storm from hell. Foxholes, ditches, trenches, none of it mattered anymore. For soldiers trained to survive traditional bombardment, this was a nightmare. The air itself had turned into the enemy. Within seconds, formations shattered. Veterans who had fought through the horrors of the Eastern Front panicked. Survivors said it felt as if the sky itself had turned against them. For Axelson's gunners, it was a sight they would never forget. What they'd unleashed wasn't just a new weapon, It was the future of warfare. The proximity fuse was honestly one of the most extraordinary scientific achievements of World War II, second only to the atomic bomb. It actually packed a miniature radar system inside a shell barely larger than a thermos. Inside each fuse were more than 130 precision components, including these tiny vacuum tubes that could somehow survive the mind-bending 20,000 Gs of acceleration when fired from a cannon. Once the shell left the barrel, a glass capsule shattered, activating a chemical battery that powered the onboard radar. As the shell approached its target, whether an aircraft or a soldier, the radar sensed the distance and detonated automatically at just the perfect height. No more guessing, no more timing errors. Each round was, well, a near-perfect hit. The genius behind the project was Dr. Merle Tuver of Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, who led a team of scientists working under extreme secrecy and urgency. Their work was as classified as the Manhattan Project itself. They knew that if the enemy ever understood how it worked, it could turn the tide of the war. But in December 1944, theory met reality, and the results were devastating. The proximity fuse changed everything. The German advance that had rolled forward relentlessly suddenly slowed. Entire companies were wiped out before reaching the American lines. Soldiers who thought they'd found safety behind cover were torn apart by invisible explosions above. For the first time, American artillery was fighting smarter than the enemy. The precision of the airbursts broke the momentum of the attack and, more importantly, bought the Allies something priceless: time. Time to regroup, time to dig in, time for reinforcements to arrive. In those crucial hours, the balance began to tip. Across the front, other units began to hold their ground. The storm that was supposed to crush the Allies started to lose its fury. What happened at the Battle of the Bulge wasn't just a clash of armies. It was a collision between two eras, the old world of brute force and the new world of technological warfare. While Germany's once feared war machine was starving for fuel, steel and hope, America's war industry was running at full throttle. Scientists and engineers had become as vital as soldiers and generals. The proximity fuse was the proof. By the war's end, these fuses had been produced in the millions, credited with increasing the effectiveness of Allied artillery fivefold and saving countless lives. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill later called it, the most important new weapon of the war, next to the atomic bomb. And to think it all began because one colonel refused to play by the book. Axelson's decision to use the proximity fuse without authorization could have ended in court-martial. Instead, it became a turning point in the Battle of the Bulge. His defiance didn't just save his men. It helped stall Hitler's final offensive and paved the way for the Allied counterattack that followed. The Germans never recovered. Their last gamble had failed. But perhaps the greater story isn't the battle itself. It's what the proximity fuse represented. A shift in how wars would be fought forever. From this moment on, intelligence, science and innovation became as deadly as bullets. The battlefield had entered the age of technology, and there was just no going back. The Battle of the Bulge was more than just the last stand of a desperate army. It was a reminder that wars are won not only by courage and numbers, but by ingenuity and boldness. And, you know, sometimes history changes because one person dares to break the rules. If you loved this story and want more hidden moments that shaped our world, subscribe to the Forgotten War Fronts and hit that notification bell. There are hundreds of untold stories like this, secrets buried in the fog of war that deserve to be remembered.